Up next is someone I like to call the professor. He has been a syndicated radio talk show host with the Salem Radio Network for decades. A great guy. So great that I need to refer to my notes to give him a proper introduction. Dennis Prager is the president of Prager University. It is one of the most widely viewed video sites in the world, which might be why YouTube is starting to tamp that down. Matter of fact, I just talked to somebody the other day whose kids have come home from college infected with the virus that they get from academia. A strong dose of PragerU videos will cure that, that's for sure. As I said, he's a nationally syndicated radio talk show host, a columnist, and author of 9 books. Most recently, the 2nd volume of his commentary on the first 5 books of the Bible, the Rational Bible. Please give it up virtually for Dennis Prager.
Thank you all, appreciate it. Hi everybody, good to be with you. It's an honor to be at this church. And I have a long and wonderful relationship with Pastor Hibbs, one of the truly special men that I have ever gotten to know, as you folks know well. So the theme here is California, come back. Of course, one might as well say America, come back. In fact, one might as well say Western world, come back. The origins of California, the origins of America, the origins of the West are Judeo-Christian origins. Were it not for that thing known as the Bible, there wouldn't be a West. It is as simple as that. People don't want to acknowledge it. When they created the European Union Charter a few years ago, they did not mention Christianity. In what founded Europe, they didn't mention, I mean, you could be an atheist. You just have to be honest. You don't have to be a believer. You have to be honest to acknowledge what the roots of the West are. And we're losing the West. We're losing California, certainly. That's a beautiful motto there, Soli Deo Gloria. I'm very involved in classical music. My favorite 2 composers, Bach and Haydn, every manuscript had those words on it because they wrote for the glory of God. I have often noted that classical music has deteriorated as God ended his sovereignty in Western life. I don't know if a secular world can produce the profundity of art that the religious world produced. But that's another question for another time. So let me give you a little story here, which will really set the stage for what has happened in California. A number of years ago, I don't remember, maybe 10, 15 years ago, the supervisors of LA County decided to drop something from the LA County seal. The LA County seal, which most people obviously even in LA County have no idea, and I had no idea, only when I heard about this did I look at it, and it had, let's see, 3, 6, I think 7 little boxes with an illustration in it. So one was oil rigs, one was cattle, the big central one was the goddess Pomona, and I don't remember what the others, but one was Hollywood stars, because for the obvious reasons, and a cross, because guess what? Los Angeles was founded by people who believed in the cross. In this case, Catholics, and that's why it's called Los Angeles, the angels. Okay? If it were founded by secular people, it would be called Los Secularistas. But it's not Los Secularistas, it's Los Angeles. By the way, I'm a Jew saying this. You don't have to be a Christian or a Catholic or anything else to note there is truth. Truth is number one. There is no such thing as Jewish truth, Christian truth, or atheist truth. Truth is truth. So they decided to remove, they were having a vote. I think it's the 5 commissioners of LA County were going to have a vote, hastily called because they knew people like me were opposed to the removal of the cross. And in one day, I got 2,000 people to demonstrate outside there, and I went inside and I gave a little talk in opposition to removing the cross. And I mention this for a number of reasons. First of all, the argument that I gave was very relevant to today in America. I said, I am not a Christian, but this cross is my cross. I live in Los Angeles County. That is my history. You can't take away my history. It has nothing to do with faith. You are removing my history by removing the cross from the LA County seal. How dare you? If it was founded by Wiccans, I would expect to see a broom. But it wasn't founded by Wiccans. It was founded by Christians, in this case, Catholics. You can't erase my history. That's my history. It had no effect, needless to say. By a 3-2 vote, they voted to remove it. And I remember looking at them and offering the following. I was in the Soviet Union when I was very young, because that was my field of study, communism and Russian. And I remember hearing a Soviet dissident joke. And it went like this. In the Soviet Union, the future is known. It's the past that's always changing. It's a brilliant line, and that's exactly what the left is doing to America. The past is changing. What started in LA with the removal of the cross is going across the country, not just about the cross, but about American history. The New York Times created this gigantic lie, and I use that word very rarely. It's a gigantic lie that America was founded in 1619, not in 1776. Because the whole history of America is a history of slavery and racism. So when the first slaves came, that's when it started. They don't note that, I mean, they lie. For example, they say that the American Revolution was solely about keeping slavery. I mean, this is a new interpretation of the American Revolution. And they don't note, for example, that while 340,000 or so Africans came to America as slaves over the course of a couple of hundred years, 12 million went to Brazil. We have 3% of the slaves that came from Africa compared to Brazil, for example. But there are no demonstrations against Brazil because they hate America, they don't hate Brazil. It's about America hatred, it's not about slavery. Everybody had slaves. Anyway, so I told you the story about the cross because now we're seeing American history rewritten just like they did in LA County. And symbolically, the removal of the cross is the removal of the religious origins of this country. And that means the end of the country as we know it. This country was founded on the belief that all men are created equal, that we are endowed by our Creator, with certain inalienable rights. Because if you are endowed by your Creator, our Creator, with rights, they can't be taken away. What God bestows, man cannot take. What man bestows, man can take. If our rights come from government, we have no inalienable rights. It's definitional. And as I said, you don't have to be a believer to understand that that's true. You may not believe that there's a Creator, but that's not what we're asking you to believe. We're asking you to not believe, but affirm that only if there is something above humans from which we get our rights are these rights inalienable. So this is what is happening to America. Our past is being erased, and the American Trinity is being dissolved. What is the American Trinity? Christianity has a Trinity. So does America. I didn't make it up. I made up the term American Trinity. I didn't make up the contents. They're on every coin. Liberty, in God we trust, e pluribus unum. The left is opposed to all of them. It is opposed to liberty everywhere the left. I'm not talking about liberals. Liberals have nothing in common with the left, though unfortunately they don't know it, so they vote left. But in fact, liberalism has always believed in liberty. Leftism has never believed in liberty. From Marx to Lenin to the American left today, liberty has never been a left-wing value. They believe in equality, the French Revolution versus the American Revolution. Our revolution was religious and liberty-based. The French Revolution was secular and equality-based. Equality of result. We don't believe in equality of result because liberty conflicts with equality of result. If baseball players and doctors or nurses have to make the same amount of living, the same income, then obviously you have eliminated liberty. Liberty means there will be inequality. Certain people will make more money than others in a free society. That is the way it works. Some people have more talent, some people have more luck, some people work harder. That's just the way it is. I don't have a problem with that. I have no problem. I grew up in the middle of the middle class. My neighbor had a Cadillac. My father had an Oldsmobile. My father was 2 ranks down from my neighbor. You knew a person's income by which GM car they drove. Cadillac, Buick, Oldsmobile, Pontiac, Chevrolet. So we were in the middle. We had an Oldsmobile, and I thought we were unbelievably well off having an Oldsmobile. My mother had a Pontiac. My father had an Oldsmobile. It's a terrible patriarchy in my home. Anyway, my neighbor had a Cadillac. It never occurred to anyone in our family to be jealous of our neighbor. If you would have asked me, do you envy your neighbor? I would have thought, what are you, crazy? What do I care? I'm living a great life. He has a Cadillac, more power to him. What do I care? Anyway, equality versus liberty. In God we trust versus a radically secular society. Not just secular government, secular society. We wanted a God-based society, and I will explain why in a moment. And e pluribus unum, from many, one. We believe that if everybody becomes an American, we can absorb people from every race, every ethnicity, every nationality. That was the American promise. But the left doesn't believe in that. They believe that Americans are not one, that you are black and you are Hispanic and you are this and you are that. To the extent that we are now told that if you're colorblind, you are a racist. I grew up as a liberal. Of course I did. I'm a Jew from New York. What else could I grow up as? And I was told that colorblind is the ideal. I still think it's the ideal. That's the liberal ideal. It's another example of liberal-left difference. The left does not believe that you should be colorblind. Liberalism does. Of course I see your color if I see you're white or you're black or you're yellow or you're red. But so what? I see your hair color too. I see your height. So what? Does that determine who you are? Is your hair color important? Why is your skin color any more important than your hair color? But I don't know. Give me an answer to that. There is no answer. Skin color means nothing to people who believe that we are created in God's image. But the left doesn't believe we're created in God's image. So to them, color is important. So I want to get back to God and liberty in particular. We have an iconic symbol in America. It is the symbol of America, and it is the Liberty Bell. Most Christians and most Jews don't know this, but there is one thing inscribed on the Liberty Bell. It's a verse from Leviticus, the 3rd book of the Bible. It shows you, by the way, how much the founders knew the Bible, that they knew Leviticus. If you ask the average American today, what is Leviticus? They will think it's either a disease. You know, he suffers from Leviticus. It's an advanced case of Leviticus. Or a horse. Yeah, Leviticus came in 3rd at Aqueduct. They knew their Bible that well. Many of them in Hebrew, and this was the verse, and you shall proclaim liberty throughout the land to all its inhabitants, Leviticus 25. And they knew that you can't have liberty without God. And I want to explain why. We have much less liberty today in America than we did 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And it's because we are a more secular society. The less God, the less liberty. This is counterintuitive. People will think, oh, God is the suppressor of liberty. No, the founders of America knew God is the protector of liberty, and here is why. The founders knew that people are not basically good. Human nature is very, very problematic. There is good in us, but good is like gold. It has to be mined. Otherwise, you grow up and people become pretty awful. So therefore, they knew that you either need a strong state or a strong God to keep people good. If you feel answerable to God for your behavior, that will ensure better behavior. If you feel that you are accountable to the state, like the police, right? People drive according to speed limits better, right? When there are highway patrolmen, policemen around. It's naive to the point of stupidity to argue that it makes no difference. People will do the right thing even if they're not going to be punished if they don't. It's not true. It's nonsense. Now, it's not true for everything. I wouldn't murder if I knew I could get away with it, because first of all, I feel it's wrong. It's been inculcated in me. Secondly, my religion teaches me that. I have to answer to God if I murder. But okay, nevertheless, what we're seeing in the West and in America is the smaller the God, the bigger the state. That's exactly what's happening. The founders wanted a small state, so they wanted a big God. If people feel accountable to God for their behavior, then the state doesn't have to be that strong in its police powers. So that is why they attached God and liberty, and they are right. And again, as God recedes, so is liberty receding in the United States. No God, there's another problem with no God. Not just no liberty or less liberty, no wisdom. Tell you how I learned this one. I went to graduate school at Columbia University in New York, and I was taught nonsense, just like today. Today there's more nonsense because we didn't have preferred pronouns at Columbia, but we were not taught that men give birth and menstruate at Columbia, but we were taught that there's no difference between men and women, which led to the belief that men menstruate, which is now an ACLU official position. Excuse me. So I learned nonsense, a lot of nonsense. One day, walking around Columbia, I thought I was going a little nuts. Why are brilliant people teaching me nonsense? And then, out of nowhere, a phrase in Hebrew came to me. I had attended yeshiva, that is a religious Jewish school, till I was 18, half the day in Hebrew, religious subjects, half the day in English, secular subjects. I had not said this phrase, this verse, since first grade. Came back to me out of nowhere in graduate school, and it was Reshit Chochma Yirat Adonai. Wisdom begins with fear of God. And that was the great realization of my life. There's no wisdom at Columbia because there's no God at Columbia. And I realized then that another consequence of the death of God is the death of wisdom. The amount of nonsense taught at the most secular institution in our society, the university, is proof of this thesis, this 2,000-3,000-year-old thesis that wisdom begins with acknowledgement or fear of God. It's a godless place, the university, and it's a wisdom-free place. You learn nonsense at our universities and now at our high schools. The more secular they are, the more or the less wisdom you learn. No wisdom, society is over. I want to make this clear. Wisdom is more important than good intentions. I learned this from Judaism's, my religion's tradition. On Passover, there's the Passover Seder. Many Christians have attended one or know about it. The prayer book for the Passover Seder is called the Haggadah, and it's 2,000 years old. And in it is a story about the 4 sons, it's called. How do you talk to your children about what God did for us in the Exodus? Because it acknowledges every child must be addressed differently. So there are 4 sons. One is wise, one is bad or evil, one is simple, and one doesn't know how to ask any questions. The 4 sons. When I was a kid, it occurred to me there's no good son. There's a bad son, but there's no good son. And I never came up with an answer until much later in life. The brilliance of the rabbis who wrote this down, and that is, you can't be good without wisdom. This is the crisis in America. All the people who think they're good but have no wisdom are doing bad. Good intentions without wisdom equals bad. We don't value wisdom. So we don't understand the consequences of what people say. That's why the University of California, we're talking about California, the University of California, you could see this on the internet, has a list of racist microaggressions. Racist things people say that they don't realize is racist. For example, if you say there's only one race, the human race, that's racist. Is that absurd? Do you understand? Is that wise? It's the opposite of wisdom. It's ridiculous. There's only one race, the human race, is a beautiful comment. It's anti-racist. Or if you say I'm colorblind, of course you should be colorblind. That's the whole point. Because color doesn't matter. God has no color, and we're created in the image of God. The amount of non-wisdom, and therefore leading to people doing bad things because they don't have any wisdom. Secular society produces knowledge, but virtually no wisdom. Now, there are religious fools, but there are very few wise secular people. And there were no wise secular institutions. So, no God, no liberty. No God, no wisdom. Next, no God, no right and wrong. So listen to this. If there is a God, then there is an absolute right and an absolute wrong. I have debated this all of my life. People find this very difficult to intellectually understand. It's not complex. If God didn't say murder is wrong, then murder is not wrong. You can have an opinion that murder is wrong, and I hope you do, but it's not wrong with a capital W. It's an opinion. I don't like murder. Good. But what if you do like murder? If there's nothing higher than you that says murder is wrong, it's just your feeling or opinion. Every secular philosopher I've debated, from Oxford to American universities, has acknowledged this. If there's no God, then ethics are subjective. It's not a knock on secularists. It's not a knock on atheists. It's just a fact. Honest atheist philosophers acknowledge if there is no God, and they don't believe there's a God, then ethics are just opinion. I don't think murder is right. I don't think stealing is right. Good. But what if you do? The Catholic Church found it very hard to convert the German tribes to Christianity. And it was a historian that taught me this. The reason was they believed that killing was okay. When the Catholic Church came with the 10 Commandments, they said, no deal. Killing is right. And what was their defense? Their defense was the stronger kill the weaker. Why not? Without God, what is your argument? People say, oh, I know killing is wrong because I don't want to be killed. Yeah, but what if you don't think you'll be killed? And what about all the vast amount of murder in history of people who didn't want to be killed? Nazis didn't want to be killed, yet they found killing Jews quite okay. If they believed thou shalt not murder, there might not have been a Holocaust. So the God issue is related to liberty, is related to wisdom, it is related to right and wrong. So listen to this. Karl Marx wrote, "We do not believe in any morality from anything above class. Class, that is economic class, determines right and wrong. If it is good for the working class, it is good. If not, it is bad. There is no transcendent source of right and wrong." That has been the position of the left, not liberals, left since Marx. Lenin said the same thing. The only thing that determines right and wrong is class, the proletariat revolution. That is right. Anything else is wrong. What they've done now, the American left has now given three other examples of what determines right and wrong, not morality. Do you know, it's a good thing I'm giving this talk today and not a week ago, because last week I actually came to realize I have been wrong my whole life about something. I've always said that the moral compass of the left is broken, and I was wrong. And this is not meant as an insult. The left's moral compass is broken implies that the left has a moral compass. It doesn't. It does not divide the world, think of the world in terms of right and wrong. It thinks in four other terms: rich and poor, which is the class issue of Marx. It thinks in terms of race, black and white. I was taught, this is not new. I was taught at the university in the 70s. A black cannot be a racist. And I remember thinking, are you out of your mind? A black cannot be a racist? But they believed it. Every leftist says this. This is universal on the left. A black cannot be a racist. It's preposterous. How could an evil be unique to a race? Answer. If you don't think of good and evil as the division, but you think of black and white as the division, there you go. And that's what they have done. That is, all whites are racist. There you go. Why is that not a racist comment? No white? Is Kamala Harris married to a racist? She's married to a white man. Is he a racist? So I'm assuming she'd have to say yes, to which I would say, you married a racist? Are you out of your mind? Are you a masochist? Would I marry an anti-Semite? You understand how it's as stupid as it is evil. No black can be a racist. Only a white can be a racist. That is the division of morality. Same thing with regard to class and race. One of the heads in Chicago of Black Lives Matter said that when blacks loot, it is not stealing. There you go. If whites loot, it's stealing. But if a person of color loots, it's not stealing. So they don't have a transcendent right and wrong. That's why I said it's not that their moral compass is broken. They don't have a moral compass. They have a race compass. They have an economics compass, but not a moral compass. Third example, power. The powerful are wrong. The weak are right. That is why they hate America and Israel. The two most hated countries on the left are two of the most good countries on earth, but they're powerful. The Palestinians are regarded as weak. The Israelis are regarded as strong. Therefore, the Israelis are wrong. There you go. This is the world, the moral world. So it's again, in that example, it's not a moral compass, it's a power compass. who has the power between the two is the wrong party. And then finally, there is another, see if I could read my own handwriting here. There is, let's see, I can't read my own handwriting as it happens. There are four, and they're very important to me. So there is power, there is race, there is class, and there is yet another division that they make. I'll come to it later then. It doesn't matter. I'm giving you examples here of what they have done instead of good and evil. Oh, did I give sex? No, I didn't give this. There's sex, exactly, male, female. That's the other division, the sexual. Believe women. That's a perfect example. That's like blacks cannot be racist. Believe women. Why would I believe women any more than men? The statement believe women is the same as blacks can't be racist. Sex determines right and wrong, not truth, not right and wrong. It's a gender compass, not a moral compass. So that is another example of what happens when God dies. I have spent my life not making the case for God's existence to people. I've spent my life making the case for God's necessity. It's easier and more powerful. This is what happens when God dies. Look at the chaos, which brings me to the final consequence. So I have been writing a commentary on the first 5 books of the Bible, the most important, if one could say, of the Bible, because everything is based on the first 5 books. Creation, the 10 Commandments, all the moral laws. I mean, love the neighbor as your neighbor as yourself. Everything stems from the first 5 books, what Jews know as the Torah. So I'm writing a 5-volume commentary on the 5 books. So here's a very interesting thing about creation. What does God do for 6 days? And I'm not saying 6 days literally. I don't care about that argument. Whether you take it literally or not is your business, not mine. But what does God do for the 6 periods of time called days? Does he create every day? No, he doesn't. It's called the 6 days of creation, but he doesn't create. The word create is only used 3 times. About the human being and about the first verse. God created the heavens and the earth. So what does God do for 6 days? The answer is in verse 2. Verse 1 is the most important verse in the Bible, in my opinion. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, because without that, the rest is nonsense. Verse 2 is the second most important. And everything was chaos, or null and void. The natural state of the world is chaotic, is chaos. What God did for 6 days was make order out of chaos. It took me a lifetime of studying the left. That was my field of study when I was at Columbia. I was at the Russian Institute. I learned Russian to read Pravda every day, the Soviet communist newspaper. I spent time in communist countries. It's amazing that I studied the left because now it's become so relevant. And it took me a good part of my life to realize what the left represents is chaos. The Judeo-Christian belief is that God made order. The left-wing belief is chaos is beautiful. Look at the streets of Portland, of Seattle, of Chicago, of so many other places in our country. You will see chaos. You will see intellectual chaos. And do you know what gave it away? What gave it away is men menstruate. Men give birth. This is not an anti-transgender statement. Men do not give birth. Men do not menstruate. That's a fact. It's not an opinion. It's not transphobic. That we are told that you have to believe that men menstruate, or that you can no longer say that women who have need to get their cervix checked or whatever, you now say people with a cervix. That is the official terminology now. People with a cervix. Men don't come with a cervix. Chaos. This is what it represents. We who affirm the Judeo-Christian value system, we affirm an order because we believe that God made an order. Do you know what the word Seder means? The word Seder for the Passover Seder, it means order. There's an order to the Passover Seder. That's all it means, is order. The Hebrew word for okay is beseder, in order. It's a big term, in order. Order, not chaos. They loathe our concept of order. They loathe it. It is not coincidental that there were some demonstrations where Bibles were burned. That was a figurative statement of what is really being done. The Bibles of our society are being burned. Burned or ignored is basically the same thing. They disappear in either case. This is what we need when we say, as this thing says, come back California and come back America. When it's been said, make America great again, that's nothing to do. It's a libel to say it has to do with white supremacy. You have to be evil to want white supremacy, and happily I have no evil people in my life. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with a society that affirmed that everyone is created in God's image, so color doesn't matter. That Americans violated that with Jim Crow or slavery is a fact, but at least they had the standard. I'd rather have people who sin with standards than people with no standards. Then there's no hope. When the standards are destroyed, it's over. The standards have been destroyed. I don't know if California can come back. I certainly hope so. I work at it. So let me leave you with this. You have to fight, or you have to help the fighters. I divide good people into three groups: those who fight, those who help the fighters, and those who do nothing. Most good people do nothing. It's the way it is. And I know why. A, it's hard to fight. B, good people are happy. So their life is filled. They don't want to be politically involved. I can't stand political involvement, believe it or not. I much rather talk to you about music and religion than about politics. This is not my first love. But I do love this country, so I have no choice but to fight. And you can help the fighters. That's just as good as fighting. Helping the fighters. The troops can't fight without supplies. So helping those who fight is just as good as fighting. If your temperament is not to fight, don't fight. Help those who do. And one of the ways you have to do it is to vote. I must admit, I'm a huge fan, as Pastor Hibbs knows. I am a major fan of America's Christians who created the greatest society known to humanity. So I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan on a personal level. Wonderful Christians that I've come to know in the course of my life. But I am disappointed in Christians who say, what do I need to vote? I don't understand that. God doesn't give a damn, forgive the language. God doesn't give a hoot. If you vote, I don't understand. What does God care about? If God doesn't care about the fate of nations, and there's no biblical basis for that, let alone one of the most religious nations ever founded and the greatest exemplar of Judeo-Christian values, then what does God care about? Whether you pray a lot? You have to vote. And those of you in California, I find this bizarre. It doesn't matter if I vote or not because everybody knows who's going to win in California. Yeah, but it doesn't matter. The popular vote matters, as we well know. It's a huge issue, the popular vote, even though it may not be determinative given, thank God, for the Electoral College. Any religious person who says, I don't vote, if I may say, I think is committing a sin. You can't be on earth just to take. You have to give. And I do believe you have to fight. California is worth fighting for, and America is worth fighting for. So I'll end with a vow I took, which is I've tried to live every day. About 25 years ago, in France, I visited Normandy Beach, where so many thousands of Americans and Canadians and others died, but especially Americans, landing to liberate Europe from the Nazis. And if you go there, you see 1,000, I don't know, more crosses. And the average guy buried there is about 20 years old, mowed down by Nazi machine guns. And I looked at that and I took this vow. If they could die fighting for America and freedom, the least I could do is live fighting for America and freedom. Nobody's asking me to face a machine gun. So I have to fight while living a blessed life. And so do you. Thanks very much. Thank you.